Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Star Trek Discovery Total Random Review for Episode 6, Lethe. I believe I pronounced that right. I don't actually know for certain. Anyways, before we get started with the review, please note that there will be a lot of spoilers in this review. So, if you're not down for spoilers, back away right now. If you don't care, then please feel free to stick around and enjoy my video. So, let's go with the initial thoughts that I had for this episode. I thought that this episode wasn't so bad. I actually enjoyed it very much, really. There wasn't really any canon stomping going on in this episode, so thank God for that. It was actually just overall a pretty good episode. And honestly, it was probably maybe closest to one of the best ones so far. The story was good. The acting was pretty good. I think the writing in this episode was pretty top notch, which is not a big surprise considering that the writer was Joe Menosky. A lot of veteran Trek fans out there might recognize that name, as he was a writer for Star Trek for many, many years. He joined the Star Trek family during the 4th season of Star Trek Next Generation. Besides writing scripts for the Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Voyager, he also worked as co-producer on TNG and as producer, supervising producer, and co-executive producer on Star Trek Voyager. So, this guy knows his Trek. I am curious how he feels about writing for this series. It was a pretty good episode, and I think his writing talent has something to do with that. So just to give you an idea of his body of work from Star Trek past, for TNG, some notable episodes that he had his hands in was First Contact, Darmok, Hero Worship, Time Zero 1 and 2, and quite a few others. On Deep Space Nine, he had his hands in not as many episodes as TNG, but he still had his hands in some. Most notably, Time's Orphan, and on Voyager, where he has the most, he was involved with a lot of really good episodes on Voyager. Futures N 1 and 2. Which is probably one of my favoriteest, that's not a word, but it is now, 2-part season finale, season premiere of all time. Probably one of my most favorite. Hey, there's proper English. Scorpion 1 and 2, Year of Hell 1 and 2, The Killing Game 1 and 2, Timeless, that was a good one. Equinox 1 and 2. Probably one of the most fun episodes of Voyager of all time. Tinker Tenor Dr. Spy. Great episode. And honestly, just so much more. This guy's got some real Star Trek street cred. So, like I said, it's no surprise that this episode was actually pretty good. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoyed the writing, and I enjoyed the episode overall. So, that was my very lengthy initial thoughts. So, let's move on to the synopsis / play-by-play of what happened in this episode of Star Trek Discovery. The episode starts off on Vulcan with Sarek boarding a ship. He's also accompanied by another Vulcan. At the moment, all we know is that Sarek is on a diplomatic mission. On Discovery, we see Tilly and Burnham jogging around the quarters of Discovery, with Burnham coaching Tilly on testing herself so that she will be prepared to become a captain one day, something that Tilly wants. Suddenly we see Lorca and Tyler taking out some Klingons. While this is happening, we learn that Tyler is from Seattle, never knew his father, and while at the academy, his mother died when she went on vacation. A rogue comet hit the planet she was on. That sucks. They take out a few more Klingons, and then suddenly the room shimmers and everything disappears. They were on a holodeck of some kind, running combat drills. They talk some more about Ash's hometown and start taking off their gear. The captain notes that he got 24 kills. Ash claims he only got 22. But when Lorca walked by his rifle, he saw that Ash actually got 36 kills. Ash was about to apologize, but the captain cut him off and told him to not apologize for excellence, that he wants his new chief of security to shoot better than him. Lorca walks out with Ash following. He is surprised but grateful at the offer and accepts. Back on Sarek's ship, we see that Sarek's associate injects himself with a compound which starts to make his insides glow red. Sarek questions him when they have not dropped out of warp. He suspects that the associate knows the true nature of Sarek's mission. Turns out this Vulcan is part of a group of logic fanatics on Vulcan who do not believe in the Federation and has little regard for humans. Two things that Sarek does hold dear. Sarek acts quickly and engages a force field when he realizes that this Vulcan was about to explode. The Vulcan raises his hand and performs a Vulcan salute, and then does exactly that, explode. The ship drops out of warp disabled. Back on Discovery, Burnham is coaching Tilly on what a well-balanced breakfast should contain. After drilling her for a bit, Tilly finally gets her breakfast, where she notices that Ash is in the mess hall. She mentions to Burnham that there was a rumor going around that Ash fought 6 Klingons in hand-to-hand combat and won. Burnham notes that she has fought Klingons before and that was not possible. They walk over to him, Tilly sitting immediately and introducing themselves. Burnham is being really awkward when Ash offers her a hand to shake. When she does, she is suddenly stricken with severe pain. She starts to think of Sarek. She ends up in Sarek's mind, where he is reliving some old memories. Burnham walks up to Sarek and Amanda, talking about how the Vulcan Expeditionary Group has rated Michael's abilities as insufficient. Sarek notes that Burnham was observing his memory and forces her out of his mind. She suddenly wakes up in sickbay. Here she explains what is going on between Sarek and Burnham. We learned that this group of Vulcan fanatics were the ones behind the bombing at the Vulcan Learning Center where Burnham, as a child, was at. She explains that this form of telepathy had happened once before at the beginning of the war, only this time it feels different, unnatural. She feels him slipping away and she believes he may be dying. Burnham pleads to Captain Lorca to help her find him. This leads us to Lorca's ready room, where he is speaking to a Vulcan admiral, where we learn that Sarek was heading to a meeting with 2 independent Klingon houses to form an alliance to help end the war. We learn that Sarek's ship was lost in a nebula near Eurydia. Lorca suggests that the Discovery should go. The admiral basically said no, and Lorca basically said yes and ended the transmission. Next, we see the Discovery spore jump to the last known location of Sarek's ship. They try to scan for Sarek's emergency beacon, but the nebula's radioactive gases have rendered the sensors inoperative. The captain suggests probes, but Saru points out that a nebula of this size would take months to scan with probes. Burnham gives them a third option, herself. In engineering, we see Burnham, Lorca, and Stamets discussing Michael's plan. She's suggesting that they can create a synthetic mind meld augment by modifying a neural enhancer. This would be a viable way for Michael to communicate with Sarek. She wants to wake him up with a mind meld so that he can activate his ship's transponder. Stamets is oddly excited at this plan and gets to work on it. In the shuttle bay, we see Burnham, Tilly, and Ash prepping a shuttle. They've decided to use the shuttle because the volatile nature of the nebula, plus all the mycelium spores on Discovery, would make the ship explode. Lorca walks onto the shuttle and asks Taylor to bring her back in one piece. Taylor assures him that the shuttle won't get a scratch. Lorca smiles and says he was talking about Burnham. He also added that he shouldn't bother coming back if Burnham does come back with a scratch, and walks away. And the shuttle takes off. Later on, we see Lorca messing with a star chart when he gets a message from Saru. Apparently Admiral Cornwell's ship just dropped out of warp, and she wants to speak with him. They meet at his ready room, where she starts to chew him out for going on this rescue mission without Starfleet signing off on it, especially with a convicted mutineer and a POW survivor. Lorca brushes it off and explains that he can trust Ash, that he checked him out. He asks what she is really doing there, and she says that she's there to see her friend, referring to Lorca. Lorca grabs a bottle of booze from behind his desk and suggests that they stop talking like Starfleet officers and start talking like friends. Back on the shuttle, Burnham gets hooked up to the device and starts her attempt to reach out to Sarek. Tilly notices that she is on edge and points it out to Burnham. Michael explains that she is not on edge, that her behavior has more to do with what Sarek is thinking about at his last moments, which was Burnham's failure to be accepted by the Vulcan Expeditionary Group for being too human. In his last moments, Sarek is reflecting on his failure to raise Burnham better and on Burnham's failure to succeed. She lays down and starts the connection. Burnham appears in Sarek's mind once again. She overhears herself and Amanda speaking to each other, where she is gifted with a copy of Alice in Wonderland. Sarek walks up to them and explains that Michael's application was rejected. Amanda is clearly angry at this decision. Michael interrupts the memory and calls out to Sarek. Sarek walks up to her and starts fighting her in an attempt to force her out of his mind once again. She starts to fight back and explains that his Katra brought her there. She explains that he is near death and that she wants to help. He explains that she will fail. Meanwhile, back on the shuttle, her vitals are fluctuating. Ash orders Tilly to disengage. She does as ordered, and Michael suddenly wakes up. Back on Discovery, Cornwell and Lorca are sitting in his quarters having a drink. They start to reminisce about the old days. She explains that she has been worried about him. She points out how he has been disobeying orders, putting the ship and his crew in danger. She explains that he hasn't been the same since the USS Buran, Lorca's old ship that he destroyed with all hands. She's worried that he hasn't fully recovered. He suggests that they do something better with their time. The Admiral gets up and removes her badge. And back on the shuttle, Burnham and Ash are having a disagreement. She wants to go back to Sarek, and Ash wants to pull out and head back to Discovery. In the end, Burnham wins, and she gets reconnected. This time, she calls out to Sarek immediately. They start to fight again. She questions what he is hiding. She's begging him to let her know. She explains that he had faith in her once before, and that he can have faith in her once again. He explains he never lost faith in her, and that the failure on the day of the memory she was in was his. He agrees to show her what he is hiding. Burnham learns that Sarek was left with a choice. A representative of the Vulcan Expeditionary Group reminded Sarek that no non-Vulcan has ever served with them, and that with no doubt Spock would eventually want to join as well. He reminds Sarek that Spock is only half Vulcan, and basically said, "We will only accept one of them, so which will it be?" It is implied that he chose Spock over Burnham. Michael says that he was left with no choice, and that he should have told her. He explains that Spock ended up going against his wishes and joined Starfleet instead. He points out that his choice merited nothing, and questioned what would be the point of telling her. So she points out that instead he chose to lie to her and make her feel like she failed him. She asks him if he has any idea how badly that lie affected her. He admits that he did not, but does now. Sarek falls to the ground, bleeding from his side. She asks him to show her how to save him. They share a mind meld, which wakes Sarek up on his ship. He activates the transponder, and Ash picks up the signal. Back on Discovery, we see a barely dressed Cornwell and Lorca in bed. Lorca is asleep while Cornwell is awake. She sees scars on Lorca's back and starts to caress them. Suddenly, Lorca wakes up with a phaser in hand, pins her down on the bed, and points the phaser in her face. He realizes what's happening and apologizes, explaining he's not used to sleeping with anyone in his bed. He puts the phaser down and backs off. The Admiral jumps out of bed and freaks out on him, pointing out that he sleeps with a phaser under his pillow and he claims nothing is wrong. Lorca tries to calm her down. She explains that she has ignored all the signs and accuses him of faking his psych evaluations, that he did it so brilliantly that he has fooled everyone. She gets redressed and explains that she cannot leave Starfleet's most powerful weapon in the hands of a broken man. He begs her not to take his ship away from him, that it is all he's got. He admits that she is right, that he has been lying about his status of health, and that he needs help. The Admiral says she hates that she doesn't know whether or not Lorca is being genuine, and storms out. The moment is interrupted by a calm message from Saru, explaining that the away team was back and that Sarek was in sickbay. Lorca heads there and speaks to Burnham, who explains that the doctor says Sarek would live, but is in no condition to meet with the Klingons. She goes on to explain that the window to meet the Klingons closes in a few hours, and that if Starfleet wanted to salvage this and send someone, they would not have enough time. Lorca suggests that the Admiral could make it there in time, because they are more than halfway there. He congratulates Michael on a job well done. She thanks him for allowing the mission to save Sarek. He explains he didn't do it for him, but for her, and that there was a position waiting for her on the bridge as a science specialist, and she accepts. Michael walks into sickbay to speak with Sarek. She asks what he recalls of his rescue. He claims nothing, that he was unconscious. She claims that he knows what happened and explains that he could talk to her about it, and that it would make them grow closer. She explains that is how families work. He explains that technically they are not related, to which she responds that she was not going to push him, walks off, and says that they will have to have this conversation one day. Calls him father, and leaves sickbay. Later on, we see Admiral Cornwell preparing to board a shuttle. She explains to Lorca that she is not trying to end his career, that when she gets back, they will talk about how he will step down, and if he gets the help he needs, that they will even talk about him getting his ship back. Lorca, not looking very pleased with that, wishes the Admiral good luck with the negotiations, and the Admiral boards the shuttle. On Cancun 4, where the negotiations are taking place, we see Admiral Cornwell address the Klingons in the room. They are not surprisingly there for peace. They kill the Admiral's escorts, and a hologram of Cole appears. This was a trap, and now they have a Starfleet Admiral as a hostage. Cole praises the Klingons and awards them with the ability to cloak their ships, and tells the Admiral that he's looking forward to meeting her. The episode ends with Saru at Lorca's quarters, explaining that the meeting was a trap, and that they have taken the Admiral hostage. Lorca orders Saru to notify Starfleet Command and ask for orders. Saru is surprised by this order. He points out that in the past they've used alternative thinking when it comes to situations like this. Lorca explains that if they go, they might be going into a trap. He explains that Discovery is bigger than all of them, and that they can't risk it. If Starfleet orders them to rescue the Admiral, they will. Saru does what he is told and leaves. Lorca walks back into his quarters and to a window, where he stares out into space. The camera pans down to reveal that he has a phaser tucked into the back of his pants. Well, that was episode 6 of Star Trek Discovery. So let's go over some of the things I noted in this episode. Not a lot of bad things, to be honest. There are 2 things that bothered me. So we're going to start off with something bad and end with something bad, and fill the middle up with some good stuff. The holodeck scene at the very beginning of the episode. This bothers me. They shouldn't have this technology yet. I understand that if you consider the animated series to be canon in any way, shape, or form, then holodecks did exist at this time, but not as advanced, obviously, as what we see in TNG onwards. But there was an animated episode where they had like a holographic recreation room. Okay, fine, fair. To most Trekkies, the animated series is not canon. So to me, it never has been, and I don't consider that to be a thing. Therefore, holographic technology of any level that we've seen on Discovery shouldn't exist. And the fact that they were in a holodeck, a form of holodeck, doing battle drills like that is wrong. They're not supposed to have this kind of technology yet. So that bothers me. Not much more to say about that. It just doesn't belong. It belongs in the 24th century, on TNG onwards. It doesn't belong here in this timeline, especially 10 years before Kirk takes command of the Enterprise. So, yeah, not a big fan of that. Let's go on to Sarek and Burnham's backstory here. I actually rather enjoyed this very much. We know from the original series that Spock and Sarek had a falling out. We never really knew what that falling out was, and this kind of fills that in. It fills that hole in. We learned that Burnham was signing up to join the Vulcan expeditionary group, and that Spock was in line for that as well. And they were basically telling Sarek that they had to that he had to choose between his son and his ward, because they wouldn't allow more than one non-Vulcan into their ranks. And he decides to choose Spock over Burnham, which in the end ended up being a horrible decision, because Spock didn't want to have anything to do with that expeditionary group and decided to join Starfleet instead. So Burnham could have joined, and her life could have been way different. So that was interesting, and when we fast forward to TOS and see the obvious tension between the two of them, this kind of makes more sense now. Now we've got a bit of a backstory to why Spock and Sarek don't always see eye to eye, and why they're constantly at each other's, well, not each other's throats, but they're constantly combating with each other with words. So yeah, I kind of like that. It's a nice addition to the canon and to the lore of Star Trek. So I was very happy with that. It was handled very well. Now let's move on to Captain Lorca. Man, this guy is messed up. Now, this isn't a bad thing either. I'm actually now really starting to enjoy this character because he's so not your typical Starfleet captain. He's obviously suffering from a severe case of PTSD, some kind of mental illness, all stemming back to the time when he blew up his own ship and killed his crew to prevent them from being taken as prisoners by the Klingons and tortured. This has obviously affected him far more than he's letting on. I mean, sleeping with a phaser under your pillow, pointing that phaser at an admiral that you just, banged, and just walking around your quarters with a phaser tucked in the back of your pants. That is crazy paranoia. I really want to know where this is going, and I'm going to point out that there is a theory going around. I'm not going to mention the details right now, but I am thinking about doing a video on that, so keep your eyes open for that. I might do the video on this theory. I like this theory, and it does kind of explain him a bit. All I'll say is that this theory would make Captain Lorca canon. It would solidify his continuity in the series. But yeah, the man is interesting and scary at the same time. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he brings next. I mean, after all that with the Admiral, he basically tossed her to the wolves to get her out of his way. He suggested that she go on the mission with the Klingons. He clearly isn't, doing things like he normally does when Saru's asking him about rescuing her. He does point out that normally that Lorca does what he wants, and now all of a sudden he's saying, let's contact Starfleet and get orders, and if they say we should go save her, we'll go save her. The man is messed up. He is very messed up. I am very excited to see where this goes. And the final thing I would like to cover, the most idiotic, ridiculous thing I saw in this episode were the disco shirts. That's right, disco. Could they not afford to put the remaining letters in there and have it say Discovery? Why the hell does it say disco? Like, does the Enterprise have these shirts, and does it say Enta? Like, seriously, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Why not just put the whole name on there? Now you got disco shirts. Great, we're watching Star Trek Disco. The jokes will never end, and it's just so freaking stupid. Doesn't break canon or anything. It's just a really dumb thing that really grinded my gears in this episode. Fuck, disco. Really? Anyways, that's everything I noted. That is it, guys. So please, guys, let me know what you think of this episode in the comments down below. Are you excited for what Lorca might end up becoming, or what the next crazy Lorca thing is going to be? Are you happy with how they handled Sarek and Michael's backstory and how they made it fit into the TOS continuity and the explanation for Sarek and Spock's not hatred but anger towards each other, or displeasure, I should say, because they're Vulcan. Vulcans don't get angry, apparently. Yeah, you know, did the holodeck scene piss you off like it pissed me off? And seriously, do you guys like the disco shirt or not? Let me know all of that down in the comments below. Also, please let me know how I'm doing. I haven't heard any actual criticism yet, any constructive criticism. Do you guys like my videos? Do you find them to be too long? Should I shorten them? Should I make them longer? Let me know. I'm making these all for you, not just for me, so I would be happy to hear some input. Alright, everybody, let's move on to the rating of this episode. Like I said, it was really good. I was really happy with the fact that we got the writer that we got and his impressive Star Trek resume. It was really good. I'm going to give this episode a 4 out of 5. It was definitely a really good episode, probably one of the best ones so far. Yeah. Alright, everybody, thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, you can give it a thumbs down. If you like my content and want to see more of it, click on that subscribe button. And don't forget to click on the bell notification button so that you'll be notified when I upload new stuff. Also, please feel free to check out my other content. Alright, everybody, see you all next time. Live long and prosper.